Good afternoon from Wayne, Pennsylvania. I mentioned some stats that I was able to pull up this morning. So just remember that America, although a developed nation, has a significant population. There are two countries in the world, China and India, which are, in my view, from a population standpoint, outliers. So if you take them away, America has 350 million people. So that's a very big population. That's almost double the population of Russia, for example. Anyway, so in a country of 350 million people, 38 million people live below the poverty line. Okay, 44 million people face food security issues, which is significant. Almost 700,000 people, which is 7 lakhs in Indian term, are homeless every night. And this is, in my view, a very conservative number. The actual numbers of homelessness in America are significantly larger. There are a lot of people these days who are living in cars, who are living in other storage facilities and so on. People know where normally human beings are not supposed to live. Another very important statistic is that 50% of the Americans who do have jobs, they won't be able to come up with $500 for an emergency. So they're literally living paycheck to paycheck. Another statistic is 1%, the top 1% of Americans own 30% of America's wealth, and the bottom 50% own only 3% of America's wealth. So think about that for a minute. The bottom 50% of the population own less than 3% of America's wealth, which is a staggering number of. That stat just blew me away. Healthcare cost is the leading cause of bankruptcy in America. Before I go through my topics, I want to mention a joke by George Carlin. I don't know if you guys know him. He's a great American comedian. He passed away several years ago. But he once said, "It's called the American dream because you have to be asleep to believe it." So that's it's not a laughing matter, but it puts everything in context. So I want to mention a few things that I came across in my 35 years in this country, which kind of tells me that the so-called American dream, at least for me, is over. The first is the tech echo chamber. I call it the tech echo chamber. What it is if you work in IT, I'm not an IT engineer by default. I'm a mechanical engineer, but I learned quite a lot of programming languages in my mechanical engineering, and I was able to use those languages to leverage an IT career because at that point I felt IT pays more than what a normal mechanical engineer would earn in the US. But to my surprise, in IT, as initially it was not the case, like when I joined IT in the mid-90s, when the IT boom was just starting, this was definitely not the case. But today it is very true, which is that when you work in an IT office, and if you close all the shutters and curtains, and if you look at what is in front of you, you might think that you are in Hyderabad or Bangalore. It does not feel like the United States at all. The IT industry, and for that matter, all the high-tech industry, the high-income industry, whether it is biotech and AI or any of those industries, huge numbers of people who work in the industry are Asian Americans, predominantly from India and some other people from some other countries. If you look at pharmaceuticals, if you look at the pharmaceutical lab work, they are dominated by Chinese Americans and so on. So initially, it used to be just the worker bees who were predominantly from other countries, but increasingly in my last several projects, if you look at the business is also Indian. In many cases, the business are people from India who have been in the US for like 3 or 4, 5 years, and they represent the business, and guys like me represent the technology companies who are implementing things for business. So I think that is so. Increasingly, when I look for a job, or anybody in this industry looks for a job, you are not like, you are basically competing against other Indians, and I do not know at this point if that is a good thing. If you are an American, like American citizens essentially competing hard with temporary foreign workers. I want to say foreign workers on temporary visas. Yeah. So the second topic to me is what you get for your taxes. The public tax illusion. So in the US, you pay property taxes, and predominantly the property taxes are supposed to support the local law enforcement and school system. So if you look at the American school system, you will hear some people say, "Oh, it's a great system," And my question is, it depends. Depends. Let's say you live in Philadelphia. In Philadelphia, the public school system, which is where the overwhelming majority of people in America go to school, is public school system, not private schools, right? So the public school system in Philadelphia is pathetic. In Philadelphia, the adult functional illiteracy rate is over 50%. It's around 54%. Absenteeism in schools is very high. It is about 10% overall, and in high school, which is very important phase of your life, it can be even 30%. So you will find most of the immigrants, particularly the Indian Americans and Asian Americans, even though they have a job in the city, they will go and live in the suburbs. So in the suburbs, certain suburbs are very wealthy. You'll have upper middle class and higher middle class Americans, and mostly Asians, and the school system will be much better, and the law enforcement system, the police and other law enforcement are very good. But if you come to the city, you talk about your tax dollars going to waste. The school system is a great example. So you pay huge amount of tax in the city, not just property tax, but city tax and higher sales tax and so on. But then you don't get anything in return, particularly when it comes to education. And most Americans are kind of, kind of stuck. So if you're in the city, you are kind of stuck. So if you look at overall college education, again, it's a mixed bag. You have a lot of universities in America. Finding a university to go to is not that difficult. I remember the early 80s in India, where even if you have a very good score in 12th standard, it was very difficult to find a university admission, primarily because there weren't many number of universities at that point, and on top of that, India also has a reservation. So in the US, that's not an issue. You can get a college admission particularly if you are okay with a state college. But then most of the degrees that people graduate with are really not any good. Like particularly, they are not good when it comes to finding jobs. There are only X number of history majors that can find jobs. So if you have a college system that is producing a lot of graduates with degrees that are not really useful when it comes to finding jobs, then that's a big problem. What also happens is, this happens a lot among Indian Americans. They go to very expensive universities, and typically, if an American goes to these universities, they'll come out with a huge debt, and they'll be repaying the debt for decades together. But in the case of Indian Americans, the parents help the kids out by spending huge amounts of money, like 70-80 grand a year on the college education of their kids. So if you have like 2 kids, for example, you're talking about like $500,000 in your kids' education. So I don't know if that is something worth it at this point. Okay, so the third main problem that I see is the safety and security issue. So I'm in the suburbs right now, and yesterday I went to the CVS, which is a pharmacy, and also it also has a lot of other stuff that they sell. And to my surprise, like it was like the CVS that I saw like decades before. Everything is accessible. You can pick up a product, look at it, turn it around, and feel it and all that stuff. That's not how it is in the city. In the city, if you go to a CVS, everything is shut down. If you want to even look for the price, or like get the product out from the shelf and look at it, you have to call security and wait for them. It might take like 5 or 10 minutes for them to show up, and that's how it is. And that the reason for that is the lack of security in major American cities. The all kinds of theft and violence are very common. Even Dunkin' Donuts and Wendy's have security, which is, looking back even 15 years ago, it's unbelievable. US, I always believed that although America has a problem with violent crime, America was relatively a safe place. You will not find the pickpocketing and things like that happens in European cities a lot. You won't find that a lot in America, even in big cities. But in the last 10 to 15 years, crime has dramatically increased, particularly the small crimes. A couple of years ago, I went to a T-Mobile store. I was looking at a Samsung phone that I wanted to buy, and one guy just walked in, took the phone, cut the phone from the cord, and just walked out. It's a $1,200, $1,300 phone. So this kind of crime is increasing a lot, and there are not many steps being taken to for better public safety. So definitely this is something a lot of people are concerned about in this country. So the next point is the surging costs but stagnating wages. So America is always known for very good wages, particularly if you compare United States to Europe. The biggest difference is for a similar job, you are likely to make much more money in the US than in Europe. And your hard work is rewarded. In Europe, they will say that there are some additional benefits that come along with it. I don't think I always believe that I make better decisions. I don't want the government to tell me where to go for healthcare and things like that. So I like the American system of hard work and high reward in terms of wages, but that has completely changed recently also. The inflation is going up, and there are many cases where you do the annual reviews. The reviews are more for your performance and the ways you can improve, rather than a salary negotiation that was always there in the past. So a lot of people these days are even afraid to go and ask their managers for a raise, because that might put them in their bad books and get them fired. So they are kind of hanging on to their jobs, and even though they might not get a raise for like years together. So I've personally experienced it myself, and this is a big problem: stagnant wages. So you are every year, like, you are slowly behind the curve. Even though you make a decent amount of money, the products and services are increasing in cost, so you cannot keep up with it. The last issue is kind of related to it. I think if you look at let's say in the mid 90s, early 90s, when I came to this country, even though the salaries were much less, you can buy more. The purchasing power of America, an average American, was a lot higher compared to other countries. Even if you make, let's say, 50K or 70K as a family, you can still afford to pay a mortgage, one person can still stay at home and take care of the kids. All that was possible in the early 90s. I would say most of the 90s, but that has completely changed as well. Mortgages are pretty difficult to come by. The mortgage rates are high, and the bare minimum requirements to qualify for a mortgage is also very high. So a lot of people are not able to buy houses, buy a good car, and take a good vacation and things like that. People are just working non-stop. In many cases, people are working multiple jobs, and they don't have anything to show for it. So this is some of the few things I wanted to talk about. I mean, if you go online, you will see the number of Americans who are currently looking for opportunities to live overseas. I'm not talking about Indian Americans, even average folks in this country. There are a lot of people who are in the bottom 50% that I talked about earlier, who are looking to relocate to Panama, Colombia, Vietnam, Thailand, and a lot of other places where the American dollar will go a long way, and they are able to live for like 700 to 800, maybe under $1,000 a month, which is a pipe dream in most parts of America at this point. So please comment. I want to hear your thoughts on it. And I hope this information was valuable to you. Thank you very much, and I'll talk to you later. Bye.